You were having a fancy dinner. On January 14, 2026, Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas confronted FBI Director Kash Patel during House Judiciary Committee testimony with devastating precision, exposing how the least qualified FBI director in history was dining at expensive restaurant during Charlie Kirk murder investigation in October 2025, while the actual killer remained at large until the suspect's own parents turned him in, not the FBI. Kash Patel didn't expect Jasmine Crockett would present legal evidence, proving he posted twice erroneously on social media, claiming credit for solving the case when FBI had done nothing, that he admitted requiring 14 years to fully staff the bureau he's destroying through mass firings of career agents, and that he has systematically ignored white supremacist violence, including bomb threats targeting historically black colleges that terrorize students, while FBI director redirected resources to play ICE agents on the streets. Congress didn't expect Jasmine Crockett would directly state what Democratic lawmakers had been thinking for months, but hesitated to say publicly, "I don't have any confidence in you, and honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye." Marking the first time a member of Congress has called for sitting FBI director's immediate dismissal based on documented incompetence rather than political disagreement. What did Jasmine Crockett's systematic destruction of Kash Patel's record reveal about how the least experienced FBI director in American history has transformed the Bureau into political operation that protects white supremacists, ignores domestic terrorism against black communities, and prioritizes photo opportunities over actual law enforcement, all while documented in legal evidence that even Chairman Jim Jordan couldn't defend? January 14, 2026, 2:34 p.m. House Judiciary Committee, Rayburn House Office Building. For 2 days, FBI Director Kash Patel had endured tough questioning from Democrats about his controversial tenure. But nothing in his preparation had equipped him for what Representative Jasmine Crockett was about to unleash before Congress and cameras, a prosecutorial dismantling of his entire career that would leave him unable to respond effectively. Jasmine Crockett, the 43-year-old former civil rights attorney and criminal defense lawyer from Texas, approached her questioning time with the methodical precision of someone who had tried hundreds of cases. She didn't begin with pleasantries or procedural courtesy. She began with historical indictment. When I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, Jasmine Crockett stated at 2:35 p.m., her voice carrying the authority of documented fact rather than partisan opinion, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining. The accusation landed like physical blow before Congress. Every previous FBI director, from Jay Shee, Edgar Hoover through Christopher Wray, had either served as FBI agent, federal prosecutor with extensive bureau coordination, or held senior Justice Department positions requiring intimate FBI knowledge. Kash Patel had none of those qualifications. He was political operative elevated to nation's top law enforcement position based solely on loyalty to Donald Trump. Yet we are supposed to believe that you were the greatest thing since sliced bread, Jasmine Crockett continued, her tone mixing incredulity with prosecutorial contempt. Now what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why honestly we just need to tell you bye-bye. The word bye-bye, informal, almost dismissive, carried more devastating impact than formal censure motion. Jasmine Crockett wasn't proposing investigation or oversight. She was declaring FBI Director Kash Patel should simply be removed from office immediately based on performance so catastrophically bad that continued employment endangered public safety. Kash Patel attempted to interrupt, but Jasmine Crockett cut him off sharply. "I didn't ask you a question. The control of the interrogation was absolute. This wasn't dialogue, this was prosecution before Congress. Let's go through some of your failures," Jasmine Crockett stated, opening folder containing legal evidence of systematic incompetence spanning Kash Patel's brief tenure as FBI director. Before you were even confirmed, you were already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. The illegal firings allegation struck at core of FBI's institutional integrity. Career agents who had spent decades investigating organized crime, terrorism, and corruption were being purged, not for performance but for perceived disloyalty to Trump. Kash Patel had transformed FBI from professional law enforcement agency into political operation where Trump loyalty mattered more than investigative competence. These cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his hand-picked FBI director, Jasmine Crockett noted, exposing the absurdity of Kash Patel, blaming Christopher Wray for investigations that Wray himself, Trump appointee, had overseen. If those investigations were politically motivated witch hunts, as Patel claimed, then Trump had appointed incompetent or corrupt director. If they were legitimate investigations following evidence, then Patel was destroying FBI's credibility to protect Trump from accountability. At 2:38 p.m., Jasmine Crockett delivered the personal testimony that transformed abstract policy critique into visceral reality check for Congress and viewers. When people sit around and say things like, "Oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe," I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacists. Jasmine Crockett stated, her voice carrying lived experience of black woman in America watching FBI directors systematically ignore threats targeting her community. I specifically, as a black woman, definitely don't feel safe. The personal vulnerability displayed before Congress by sitting member admitting she doesn't feel protected by FBI under Kash Patel's leadership was unprecedented. FBI directors are supposed to make all Americans feel safer. Jasmine Crockett was testifying that FBI director had achieved opposite emboldening white supremacists while terrorizing communities of color. Multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. Jasmine Crockett continued, presenting legal evidence of pattern that Kash Patel had failed to address. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues, and frankly, I don't know if under your leadership those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. The assassination attempt reference pointed to Charlie Kirk's shooting in October 2025, the case that would become centerpiece of Jasmine Crockett's prosecution of Kash Patel's incompetence. FBI director had turned that investigation into public relations disaster that exposed his prioritization of image over effectiveness. You not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts, Jasmine Crockett pressed, simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. She then displayed series of newspaper articles documenting pattern Kash Patel refused to acknowledge publicly, despite FBI's own intelligence assessments. Republican Congresswoman Kim Buck receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan. Another Republican lawmaker threatened after opposing Jordan. A third Republican forced out of Congress after anonymous callers threatened his wife so severely she slept with firearm for protection. The evidence before Congress proved even Trump allies weren't safe from right-wing extremist violence that FBI Director Kash Patel systematically downplayed to avoid political discomfort with his base. When Republicans and Democrats both face threats from same ideological source, that's not partisan dispute. That's domestic terrorism crisis requiring FBI response. Yet Kash Patel treated it as public relations problem rather than law enforcement emergency. At 2:41 p.m., Jasmine Crockett delivered the accusation that would dominate news cycles and potentially end Kash Patel's career before Congress. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? Jasmine Crockett demanded, referencing Kash Patel's January 13th Senate testimony, where he admitted mass firings had created staffing crisis requiring decade-plus to resolve. 14 years. FBI Director Kash Patel had admitted destroying FBI's institutional capacity to extent that rebuilding would take longer than most presidential administrations last. The confession of organizational sabotage was stunning admission before Congress that Jasmine Crockett now wielded as weapon. You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. Jasmine Crockett continued, documenting how Kash Patel had reassigned counterterrorism and criminal investigators to immigration enforcement, work they weren't trained for, and which depleted capacity to investigate actual threats to public safety. You're getting rid of your most qualified people, she added, noting the purge of experienced agents who possessed institutional knowledge, irreplaceable by political loyalists. Kash Patel hired to replace them. Then came the devastating blow that would trend globally within minutes, the fancy dinner scandal that exposed Kash Patel's priorities during active murder investigation before Congress. Even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner, Jasmine Crockett stated, her tone mixing disbelief with prosecutorial precision as she presented legal evidence from Kash Patel's own social media during Charlie Kirk investigation in October 2025. The timeline was damning. Charlie Kirk, conservative commentator and Trump ally, had been shot and killed outside his home in October 2025. FBI Director Kash Patel immediately took personal control of investigation, promising swift justice and pledging full FBI resources to solving the case. Yet within days of Kirk's murder, while suspect remained at large and family grieved, Kash Patel was photographed at expensive Washington restaurant, posting glamorous photos on social media while investigation he claimed to be personally supervising made zero progress. You posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody, and then you want to go and say, "Let me take a victory lap," Jasmine Crockett continued, documenting how FBI director had twice posted premature claims of solving case before legal evidence proved claims false. The first erroneous post came when Kash Patel announced FBI had identified suspect and arrest was imminent, statement that proved incorrect when supposed suspect had airtight alibi. The second erroneous post claimed FBI task force had located suspect's vehicle and apprehension would occur within hours, also false, as vehicle belonged to different person entirely. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there even though he literally confessed online. Jasmine Crockett delivered the knockout blow before Congress. The FBI hadn't solved Charlie Kirk murder through investigative brilliance Kash Patel tried to claim credit for. The actual killer's parents, horrified after seeing their son's online confession to the shooting, had turned him in to local police, not FBI. FBI director, who had been posting social media photos from fancy dinners and making erroneous victory lap announcements, had contributed nothing to case resolution except public embarrassment documented as legal evidence. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing, except for trying to put on a show for The Apprentice or whatever you want to call him, Jasmine Crockett stated, comparing Kash Patel's performance-focused leadership to reality TV rather than law enforcement before Congress. At 2:44 p.m., Jasmine Crockett pivoted to domestic terrorism that FBI Director Kash Patel had completely ignored. The pattern of threats targeting historically black colleges and universities that had terrorized students for months while FBI remained silent. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs, Jasmine Crockett stated, referring to wave of bomb threats against black colleges in October and November 2025 that forced evacuations, disrupted education, and created climate of fear for thousands of students. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. The HBCU bomb threats represented exactly the kind of domestic terrorism FBI exists to investigate and prevent. Multiple coordinated threats against institutions sharing racial identity characteristic indicated organized campaign of intimidation. Yet FBI Director Kash Patel had issued no public statements, deployed no visible resources, provided no updates to affected communities or Congress about investigations or arrests. Black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because numbers are clear that white supremacy is a problem. Jasmine Crockett testified before Congress. I've not heard anything from you today that makes me believe you're going to do anything about white supremacy problem, she concluded, delivering final verdict on FBI director who systematically ignored most significant domestic terrorism threat facing America. According to FBI's own intelligence analysis, Kash Patel rejected because acknowledging white supremacist violence might alienate Trump's base. The one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches, she added, invoking the Buffalo supermarket massacre, Charleston church shooting, Pittsburgh synagogue attack, and countless other incidents where white supremacist ideology motivated mass murder that FBI Director Kash Patel treated as isolated incidents rather than coordinated threat requiring comprehensive FBI response. When Chairman Jim Jordan attempted to defend Kash Patel by reading his resume, the contrast was stark. Jordan listed government positions Kash Patel had held through political patronage, but nothing in that resume addressed Jasmine Crockett's core accusation that Kash Patel was objectively the least qualified FBI director in history because he alone had never served as FBI agent or possessed law enforcement experience necessary to lead the Bureau effectively, documented in legal evidence before Congress. By 2:47 p.m., she had systematically destroyed every claim Kash Patel made about effectiveness before Congress. Fancy dinner during murder investigation. Twice posted erroneous claims of solving case parents actually solved. Admission of 14-year staffing crisis. Ignored HBCU threats. Unaddressed lawmaker death threats. Purged career agents. Resources redirected from terrorism to immigration. White supremacist violence as non-priority. Not partisan attack. Documented case for immediate dismissal of FBI director whose incompetence endangered lives, whose priorities serve politics over safety, preserved as legal evidence that Kaya